Well, I'm Gérard Huet, and I am a retired computer scientist. So most of my career was done in France and the US in computer science, and my main field of interest has been the mechanization of mathematics. So how to use the computer to generate proofs of mathematical statements, sometimes automatically, or sometimes with the help of a genuine mathematician, in order to establish certified mathematics. And this is, of course, extremely important because mathematics is a general framework for science, but also precisely for computer science, we are building artifacts, which are these programs, which are computational objects that have become very important in our lives. And so a lot of our social environment and security is depending on the correctness of these computer programs. And so there is a big need to verify these computer programs. So the key is to represent these computer programs as mathematical objects and to express their properties in a mathematical way. And then with the help of the tools that will verify the mathematics, then we can verify that the program obeys its formal specification, that is, it does what it's supposed to do, and it will not run into errors that could be detrimental. Like, for instance, in transportation, we are using planes now where the pilot is not using a direct way the plane commands, but it runs through programs that communicate the orders of the pilot to the various technical tools that will make the plane follow a certain trajectory. So it's essential that these programs are verified and trustable. So this is the general background. Now, as a person, I have other interests in life, especially traveling. And for me, research was a fantastic opportunity to visit many countries and be open to very different cultures from mine. So all my life I've been traveling east and west, and progressively I was traveling more east than west. And at some point I discovered India, and then I was traveling mostly in India. So I got very fascinated by Indian culture. And I was reading a lot of secondary literature in which lots of notions were expressed with Sanskrit words like yoga, dharma, karma, and so on. And it was a bit bizarre because I could not make sense how these words were used in very different contexts and sometimes in contradictory ways. So I got interested into actually learning Sanskrit so that I would understand the notions without being translated into a foreign language. Because natural languages have a way to partition reality in very different ways. So translation means distortion, and so you have to face the problem, yes, and to discipline yourself into trying to understand the genuine meaning of the notions, preferably by understanding the natural language in which these notions developed, and then read the original works that defined and clarified these notions. So this is the general background. So at a kind of late age, I was over 50 when I started this endeavor, and then I realized that I was totally incapable of learning Sanskrit in a reasonable way. It was just too hard, just many difficulties in reading the script. Then undoing segmentation, that is undoing the gluing of words together. Then understanding morphology, then syntax and semantics. This was just almost impossible. So I thought, okay, I have an expertise in computers. Let's try to write a program that will do all the pre-processing that is hard for me as a human being, but which is possibly not so hard for the computer with our sophisticated technology. So I set to work on these problems, and specifically the problem of segmentation, which is how to translate a continuous speech enunciation into a segmented representation. In Sanskrit it's called padapata, the recitation word by word, in which every word is isolated. And then when the word is isolated, then you can look at its morphology, understand its termination, and then understand its grammatical role, and then construct the semantic representation that corresponds to the meaning of the statement. Okay? And so I started this around year 2000, so it's 24 years ago. And so it turned out to be not trivial, and to be an interesting technical problem from the point of view of computer science technology. So I needed to understand better linguistics, so I took some time to understand Western linguistics and the state of the art of computational linguistics, which is the use of computers to understand natural language. And at some point, since I was visiting India often, then I was visiting more and more research institutions which were doing computational linguistics for Indian languages, and more specifically Sanskrit. So that's how I met Professor Amba Kulkarni, who's the head of the Sanskrit Studies Department at University of Hyderabad. I met her around 2004, and we started collaborating. And collaboration was very fruitful. At the time I was working at INRIA, which is our French National Institute for Computer Science, and we made a memorandum of agreement to have a joint team working on computational linguistics for Sanskrit. And And as part of this agreement, we decided that we would hold a technical meeting trying to gather all the specialists of this rather specialized discipline in conferences. So we settled on the title International series of symposia on Sanskrit computational linguistics, and the first occurrence was organized by myself in my institute. This was in Roconcourt, our lab at the time, that is in the vicinity of Paris. So in 2007, we opened this series of symposia, and it was very interesting we invited traditional pandits who traveled from India to Paris. And so from the beginning, it was clear that it was very important first to have traditional pandits involved in order to help us and guide us in doing a meaningful processing of the Sanskrit text. And also it was very important to have an international audience and participants so that we could benefit from all the technical advances in computer science, that is a field that is moving extremely fast. So after this successful experiment, an American professor, Professor Peter Scharf, volunteered to organize the second of this series that happened in Providence, in Rhode Island state in the US. So we had the second symposium in 2008, and then Amba Kulkarni organized the third one in Hyderabad the next year. And by then we had a vibrant community. I mean, this is a rather focused area, so there are not thousands of people working on this problem. But it's a vibrant community of people who have a sincere wish to collaborate on this problem. As a community, are rather happy of the way things happened. So there has been a lot of fruitful collaboration, and the symposium has survived. We are in its 7th edition now. Martin has volunteered to organize the 7th occurrence of this symposium in this wonderful environment of Auroville. So immediately we jumped on this opportunity, and the general feeling is that we have been progressing a lot. But as you point out, computer science is progressing extremely rapidly. So for instance, now we have artificial intelligence in this new sense of using big data, very large language models, and then we have tools like ChatGPT that do some processing that is a little bit mysterious, but that arrives at successful solving of problems that we could not dream of solving 2 years ago. This is actually very recent. See, this ChatGPT started about a year ago. It's very recent. And now it's a booming area, of course. And at this 7th symposium, there was a lot of debate on our methods that we developed so far, the tools we developed. Are they going to get obsolete? Are we going to get irrelevant in this new world? So, this tainted the atmosphere of this meeting with some kind of worry of, could we manage to master this technology in useful ways, and most importantly, in ways in which the young generation would be able to contribute successfully. So this was, I think, a dominant atmosphere of this meeting. And at the last conference, we discussed our hopes that we could somehow master the beast and use it not as a threat of being irrelevant, but as a tool for building better artifacts to understand Sanskrit, and most importantly Sanskrit literature. Because what is the language useful for? Of course, natural language is used foremost for human communication. But Sanskrit is a classical language that has lasted for thousands of years. So there is an immense literature over this enormous span of time. And Sanskrit is very unique in world languages in that it benefited very early of grammatical studies. So there is a genius called Panini who crafted a complete grammar for the language in the 5th century before the Common Era. So this is, on one hand, an incredible feat, and progressively I understood that Panini was not just a grammatical genius, a linguistics genius, but he was an early specialist of information theory. And so his grammar is very different from the grammars that have been coined in the West, starting from the 19th century. It's a grammar that is formal enough to completely capture Sanskrit in the minutest details. And so this meant the grammar became de facto the authority on how to speak Sanskrit and how to write Sanskrit. So this means there is a great stability of Sanskrit. The Sanskrit has not changed, or it has changed in minute ways that are consistent with the grammar of Panini. So this is completely exceptional among world languages. So we have this enormous body of literature in all fields of knowledge. So people think often that Sanskrit is useful for yoga and meditation and Indian philosophy, and they don't know that a lot of original and advanced mathematics was developed in Sanskrit, advanced medical science. You have a book of 1,000 pages in Sanskrit on how to heal elephants, for instance. You have incredible knowledge that has been embedded in these traditional works. And then you have theater, plays, and all the Indian culture, which again is hard to classify along the Western categories.